Adei, a man of many talents, an educationist, a writer, an economist, and a motivational speaker. He is known in Ghana for many different things, but his ideology on economics and leadership is what keeps him ahead of the pack. Today, we are here to learn his story from himself and those close to him.
I was born in a village of Hwiremuasi in the central part of Ghana, Ashanti region to be specific. My parents, Kweku Adei and Appiah-Miracle, that's my father and my mother, I was born into a polygamous family, but I had other siblings. But my mother had 7 children. So I'm one of 7 children who grew up, went through the primary school in the village, the nearby village for middle school, went to training college, 4 years training college, which was post-basic education, and then went to University of Ghana to do economics, masters in University of Strathclyde in Glasgow, PhD later on after working for 5 years in Sydney, Australia. Worked a few places. Now Ghana Investment Promotion Center. It used to be called Capital Investments Board, subsequently Commonwealth Secretariat, United Nations, Gimpa, Pentecost University, and now, as an old man, enjoying myself at Ashesi University. I grew up in very rural area with actually, I have very little people now alive who I call my age mates. But we grew in a village, we were in the farming community, and basically we used to go to farm with our parents, go to the local primary school, enjoying not the type of games you are talking about. Some of us were, say, busy before computers. We go and hunt birds and crabs. If you have your fufu and your pesi, almost were the only 2 things you ate all your life until you were about 15 years. So it was a typical rural community until at the age of 16, I went to the Teachers College, and then of course, my life became like most normal Ghanaian young people who went to boarding school. Well, in the village, the whole village tends to be almost your family, but when it comes to closer, at any time you have about 10 to 15 siblings around, both your mother's children, and you have brothers and sisters. So you grew up in a community, you eat together, you work together, you practically have nothing like your private life to yourself, but that is the norm. I mean, nobody had. So you enjoy yourself, and you are always, what I enjoyed most is that in the evenings, whether after school or after work, you will sit around maybe the fire on the within the compound. Your mom, usually, because my father, if you're in a polygamous family, you don't have your father to yourself. So I had very limited relationship with my father, but mom would tell us stories, sometimes about the history of our tribe, about our ancestors. So that's where we learn wisdom, the proverbs of your tradition. Sometimes you get 2 children being asked to compete on proverbs to see how much you have acquired the traditional wisdom language. So we were very poor by modern standards. I never had more than 1 cloth at the same time. You have your uniform and maybe one you use for church and a piece of cloth you slept in. That's all that you had. But we never went hungry. We were farmers' children. There was always food around. And we also never felt poor because everybody in my village, everybody was poor. If anything at all, my family were relatively better. The only time I felt poor is when, in several years, I got admission to Opokuwa Secondary School, Prempeh College in Fansipim, and Agri Memorial Secondary School, but I couldn't attend any of them because we didn't have money to look after me. then you realize that you were a bit abnormal. In the primary school, I was just trying to just have opportunity. I went to primary school late because my father wanted me to join him in the farm. So later on, I had to catch up. And in the village, there was not much challenge. For about 3 years, there were only 3 people in my class. So there was, but I started enjoying school in the middle school, because in the middle school were cluster of villages, and we had to go to this one bigger town, Brofiedru, which had middle school. As a result, you met people from all about, maybe we're about 45 in a class, coming from possibly 15 schools. So the competition was quite tough, because you have, but by the end of the first year, I was by far the top guy. So from there, you have some privileges, some of your mates, you have to help them to study. And so from there, you start playing a leadership role. I became the class prefect. And so I started enjoying life there in the school. But then when I went to training college, it was quite for 4 years. I enjoyed my classmates. I met the Lord Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior there, got good Christian friends. But it was also tough, because while I was studying for my teacher's certificate, I wanted to do my O-level, that means, and like the secondary school people, and do my A-level. And so I was very, very intense in my studies. And believe it, what people took 5 years to do in secondary school, in 2.5 years, I did my O-level and I passed. I failed English marginally, and the following year, I did the O-level English. Like WASI, I took the English and did my A-level. And again, I passed the English and I passed the mathematics and mathematics. I got intermediate, they called it subsidiary at that time in A-level. But I passed economics and I passed geography. And voila, I was qualified to go to university 3 years ahead of my mates who went to secondary school. And in fact, I did my master's and came to teach some of them at the University of Ghana. So then there was a breakthrough. So subsequently, I worked after my master's. I did my first degree, went straight to do my master's in Glasgow, in UK, and came to work for 5 years, got married before I went to do my doctorate at the University of Sydney. And that's by way of education. I've studied a few things along the way, but basically, after the master's, there was a breakthrough. I was working a responsible official in a senior position, had my car, and then you had almost forgotten how poor you were. I didn't go to secondary school, so I don't know too much about the secondary school issues, but at training college, really, I think that probably my upbringing, where by the standard of many people were hard and challenging, I came to look at life in a different way, so that probably many people, what many people have seen as a challenge and other things, they didn't bother me so much. For example, at the training college, oftentimes our water closets were not working. We had a removable toilets, and occasionally when those who were hired to do it didn't do it, some of us did it, but I never cleaned the feces and cleaned the pans and brought it back for reuse. But honestly, I didn't feel, that I was doing something. I thought that somebody had to do it. So that has generally not made me a bit more unhappy with things. So I don't have really that type of bad memories. Not because I didn't have hard times, but almost I was oriented to, you have to struggle to survive. You didn't go to secondary school, you have to make it. And I was doing farm jobs during the holidays for my survival. And these were things, but the point I'm saying is that I was used to it, working on the farm right from the age of 6 years. So anything was a relief. And that is quite unusual for modern people. Yeah, you know, you don't have clothing as the other people have. You don't eat outside virtually. You have to eat what you are provided for, and there's practically nothing, no margin for luxury. But saying so does not mean that I felt deprived. That's what I wanted to say. I never felt deprived. I felt that anything came as an opportunity. Well, I'll have to control myself not to talk too much, because my wife is the most beautiful woman, the best woman God made. And I won't dwell too much on there. But basically, I met my wife through the Scripture Union. You know, the Scripture Union used to organize camps. And on about 2 occasions, when I was in Teachers College, I met her. But I couldn't even remember the contest until I was in the University of Ghana, when she came and visited my roommate. And immediately, I knew that this woman was unique. But I had no amorous relationship with her. Why? Because she was the fiancée of one of my best friends for a minimum of 5 years. So we had a good relationship. So because he's a fiancé of your friend, you could be very, very open and laugh and share life with her. Until when I was doing my master's degree in Glasgow, for some reason they broke up. And when I came back 2 years before we proposed to each other to marry. So we were therefore good friends for years, about 7 years before even we thought about marriage. Mm-hmm. And that has helped us. We have had 4 children. Stephen, who lives with his Nigerian wife in Sydney, Australia. Then Eunice, Stephen is a civil engineer. And after Stephen is Eunice, who is a pediatrician, was married to a friend's son. They live in Dubai because the husband is a pilot of Emirates, so they love Ghana, but they have to live in Dubai. Then my next one is a girl, a scientist, has a master's in science education, married to an Australian. They live in Australia, Newcastle. And the last, baby last, is Timothy, who is also an engineer. He did electrical and electronic engineering, electronic engineering at the KNUST, University of Science and Technology, and later on did computer science. And he is in this country, one of the well-known photographers. His company is called Team 1000 West. My son is a co-owner with a friend. So I have 2 grandchildren and still counting. And we really, when we meet as a family, as we did all of us last Christmas, was almost like having a ball. When we meet, we just have good time. So, and all the time we are on WhatsApp. Actually, I don't look at much of my WhatsApp with others. I have a special number and a special iPad, which is only intra-family every day. So we are all around the world connected. Courses have gone everywhere, from Harvard to London University to everywhere around the world. But in terms of job, I had a few pieces of job. A farm laborer, even a security person while I was doing my graduate studies for 3 years. So I've done those. These are bits and pieces here and there. I love farming and the rest. But when I finished my master's degree, and then of course I taught briefly as a certificated teacher. But from 25 years, then I had a consistent career. I spent altogether 12 and a half years. In between, I went, of course, to do my doctorate at the Capital Investments Board, which is now called Ghana Investment Promotion Center. And I rose to deputy director and head of research very early. By the age of 32, I was really a senior official in the country in terms of even doing policy, writing investment codes for the country and the rest. Then, after that, at the age of 38, I got a job with the Commonwealth Secretariat in London, where I went as economic advisor, a senior economist. And I was there for 3 years. Of course, I could have continued. But then I got another job to be a senior economist of the United Nations Development Program in New York. So I moved from London to New York, stayed there for 6.5 years, rose to the level of the chief of the African Bureau. The chief is not the top. The top is the director, deputy director before the chief. But in my case, I was the chef de cabinet for the director as the chief, and served with Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. I was her personal assistant for 3 years when he was the director of the bureau. And then I went from there, still working with the UN. I had a sighting time of 5 months, being the head of the UN system in South Africa in 1994, when South Africa became independent. So I had the privilege of moving with the Mandelas for a short time. Why was it that short? Because at that time I had been appointed to go to Namibia as the head of the UN. And another colleague, British, had been appointed to go to South Africa. And for some reason, he couldn't leave his position from Kenya for some time. So I had to go and act during those exciting days of South Africa. They couldn't leave the position vacant. So I went there. And from there, I went to Namibia as the UN resident coordinator for 4.5 years. At that point, I felt that I had to come back home. So I resigned. I had a job until I retired. But I felt, when I especially got the rectorship, Director General of Gimpa, then if I didn't return to Ghana, I was 51 years, then it means I have to stay in the UN till retirement. And I didn't fancy staying away and just coming home as a retiree. So I resigned, to the shock of everybody, my UN colleagues, my extended family, my nuclear family were part of the decision, so they were not shocked. But I came to Ghana and spent 9 years transforming Gimpa, which was one of the most satisfying jobs, to take a small public sector institution to turn it to a full-fledged chartered university. So I retired at the age of 60, spent 5 years as a professor at Pentecost University, which I was hanging the boots when I had the pleasure of being invited by the president of Ashesi University to come there as a professor. So I've been with you for about 4 years altogether, initially as part-time and full-time. So it's been an exciting career. I'm 70 years this year and still going. You thought that I was like the young professors with a colored white beard. No, it is. Put it this way, if you have illiterate parents, that pressure doesn't exist at all. They then hope that one day you make it, but they themselves don't have much understanding of various professions. But my ambition as a young person was to become an engineer. If I had gone to secondary school, most likely I would have become an engineer, because I wanted to do physics, mathematics. We call it FIMAMA. That was supposed to be the brainy one when we were little, when we went to sixth form. But because I didn't go to secondary school and I couldn't do the sciences, apart from mathematics, which was compulsory, I was stuck with, geography, mathematics, religious knowledge, ancient history, just the subjects that I could do, tree and the rest. But my mathematics got me admitted, so I had to follow what I could do. So I was admitted to the University of Ghana to do economics, geography, and religion. But when I went to the religious class, I knew that, unfortunately, the teachers who were going to teach me Christianity were not born again believers. And I didn't want to study under them. So I went and changed it to do sociology. So first I did sociology, economics, and geography. So it was more or less among the things I could do. These were the subjects, and I was called to do honors program in either of them. And I chose economics, probably influenced by my older brother, who thought that being an economist will give you more money. But on hindsight, I think that I should have done geography because I liked geography naturally. But it was a matter of choosing among the three subjects, sociology, geography, and economics. And I think that I was persuaded by friends and my older brother to do economics. To be honest with you, I don't even keep records of my awards and other things. For me, I thank God for whatever I do. But if anything at all, I think that my getting two things rather are the only ones because they were life-changing. Getting admission to Ashesi University Teachers College, which was free, was life-changing because it just broke through from my remaining in the village for the rest of my life and then becoming what I've become. The second one was when I got admission to the University of Ghana and got sponsorship, even though at that time, if I hadn't gotten it, the government scholarship would have still been okay, from Griston, West Africa, now a defunct company, which was timber company near where I went to school, Ashesi in there. So, and then I got also scholarship to do my master's degree, Commonwealth scholarship, so for free, 100%, and the same Commonwealth scholarship to go and do my doctorate. When later on I wanted to do my doctorate, I got another scholarship. For me, these ones are the ones that are life-changing. But the rest, some of them, people count them higher, but I thank God for them. Like, I am a companion of the Order of the Volta, which is the second highest award, companion division, that anybody can get in Ghana. From companion, only the Star of the Volta that you get to. So there has been, but for me, the scholarships were life-changing because they made me what I am from basic school, getting scholarship all the way to the doctorate level. To me, are the greatest, and I thank God for them. How many books have I written so far? Can I even count them? I think that it's in the neighborhood of about maybe 28 books. But my books are of different kinds. There are the professional books in the area of economics and the area of leadership, where I hold two professors. I'm a professor of economics and also a professor in leadership. So there, economics, I have the basic textbook on economics called Introduction to Economic Science. My first book in the professional book was Technology Transfer and Nationalization in Ghana is there. So, and then various chapters of books and articles. But in leadership, I have basically 3 books in leadership: Call to Lead, Leadership and Nation Building, about African leadership, and then The Promise of Leadership, the possibility that Ghana will have the type of leadership that will transform Ghana from third to first world. So these are the professional books, but then I have so many of them in the area of personal organization, marriage counseling, and finance, personal finance. I like those books because I think that they have impacted literally millions of people, and especially my book on 12 Keys to Financial Success, which has transformed literally thousands of people out of poverty into wealth creation. Then there's one with my wife called God's Master Plan for Christian Marriage, another one on communication, and another one on parenting. Each one of these books has more than 30,000 copies in circulation around the world. They have been very phenomenal. So my professional ones are there, but these other ones. So altogether, the answer is that I have getting to 30 books. In fact, there are 5 of them in the making. One including my biography, and one which will be launched by the end of the year called The Gimpa Story, about the transformation of Gimpa. Well, Christian High has a history, and the history is that it was set up in honor of my 2 daughters who went to 2 of the best academic schools in the country, SOS and GIS, but who were shocked that people were going through these systems without being taught anything about God and Christianity. And they believed, I shall not profit any man to gain the whole world and lose their soul. And they felt that we need a school where they will be academically as good at these schools, but teach the fear of God. That is the genesis of Christian High, which my wife and I set up 18 years ago. Its aim is to produce Christian leaders in their generations. And it has been wonderfully successful. In fact, so successful that we can't take the students who would like to come into the school now. We have more people wanting to get in than we can admit. And that shows how successful it has been. It's among the topmost schools. People don't know because we don't advertise too much, because we don't need to. But it is in a category of its own. Academically, the Wegehe, Advanced Machimota, GIS category, but thoroughly Christian. And the aim is to produce people who will change, as our motto says, for God, family, and country. So that is the Christian High School. Now we have about 600 students. We are expanding, but we want to keep it at a maximum of 850 students at our campus now at SOTA. And because we are about to hit that number, we are about to also to start another totally new school on the Appiah Hills, because we want to keep the numbers up to a certain level. 850 is, and we want to keep teacher-student ratio 1:10. So once we hit that one, we would rather start a new campus rather than to add to the numbers. And we have a branch in my village now. We have a Ghana Christian High School, Poma Adei compound. Poma is my mother's name, Adei is my father's name, compound in my village of Shiromwasi, which has now about 100 students. But the aim is to have 240 students to serve the community where I grew up, so that they have actually a top-class secondary school in my village now. Leadership and nation building. I went onto the line of studying leadership. You won't believe that I've never gone to school to study leadership in my life. But along the way, especially serving presidents, the UN as resident representative, working at one time chief of the African Bureau of UNDP, and therefore having an oversight, I was quite convinced that leadership is cause, everything else is effect. So I started studying on my own, researching and writing, even before I came to Gimpa. And within the African Association of Public Administration, almost for years, every year going to give them lectures on leadership. And therefore, and I'm most convinced that when a country has the right quality and legitimate leaders, within a decade, the nation develops, no matter how poor they were before and how backward. So I believe in that. You're asking me about the Fourth Republic, the leaders. Definitely, Rawlings continued his, there's no way Rawlings could make a breakthrough. I think that Rawlings was charismatic, bold, but didn't have the capacity of transformation. So we largely cruised for the 8 years with the public servants and managing the best that they could. But he was able to get us between 4 and 5% growth rate per annum. But I couldn't expect any drastic change. Kufuor made a very good impression in terms of accelerating our development, solving a real challenge, which unfortunately Mahama sent us back into a HIPIC situation, and from there led the country through, and growth rate, you could see, improved now to between 5 and 6.5, all under him. And most of the today's social interventions were done under Kufuor, whether it is the school feeding program, whether it is national health. Almost every major social intervention was done under Kufuor, under his 8 years. And God being good to Ghana, under him we discovered oil. But remember, he never even had any of the oil money. So therefore, that was a classic improvement. Once again, I don't think that under Kufuor we could still have continued to grow 7, could have accelerated to 8%. But I don't think that he had any agenda which was going to totally transform Ghana. In other words, we will have continued to improve. So that I gave him the record for that. Atta Mills was a poor show, largely because even at the time that he was being inaugurated, he was not well. I knew Atta Mills privately. I mean, in terms of, I think he would have been excellent. Yeah. Atta Mills had, if he had become president earlier, because he was highly intelligent, but once again, I think we lost out because he was not in control of this country. I mean, they boast of our growing at 14% in 2011, but that was basically, there was a huge inflow of oil money, and therefore it was what we economists called growth without development, because there was nothing that they used the money to do in terms of transforming Ghana. And unfortunately, my good friend died and was succeeded by Mahama. Mahama was a disappointment, because I think that here's a young man had this opportunity, and under him, growth dropped, corruption soared, and basically we lost our direction. It pains me because I think that he had such a wonderful opportunity. The only thing he did was trying to have these secondary schools done, but these secondary schools were a total waste of our money. They are good for the cities because you can have a 2,000 school in Accra, but you go to just about 15 kilometers to my village at Fumso, you go into, most of them, just in forest, in villages, you go and put a day school, gargantuan there. All that they were interested in is to get their kickback, and then, because where are you going to get the students for 1,500 in a village? I've set a day school there, getting even 200 students from within 10-kilometer radius. It's almost impossible. So I think that they could have done much better. It is too much to say things about Akufo-Addo, but of all the presidents, he is the one who has a transformational agenda, in the sense that he's very clear what he wants to do to improve the quality education, the railway system, in the reindustrialization of Ghana, and you can go through. So, but then, as to how much he will do, I don't think that, but in terms of potential and a development agenda, Akufo-Addo is the best. But as to whether in actuality he will be able to beat Kufuor is yet to call a call. So if you exclude him, Kufuor is by far the best. I think that the potential of Akufo-Addo from the program he has set out going to be probably next to Nkrumah, the best leader of Ghana. Is very there. But you know, politicians have the penchant of sometimes changing and disappointing you. So I wouldn't raise my hand. I was probably, when you have 4 years' time, I'll be able to say. But I like his program. He seems to be quite intelligent and know what he wants to do. And to me, having a vision, a program to execute it, and interestingly, the energy, because he seems to, I thought that he's an old man of 74, but then I can't talk too much, I'm 70. Leadership is not something which is age-bound. Some people have become excellent leaders in their old age. Look at the Bible, that of Moses. We have, for the first time, a 74-year-old coming up as a president and likely to be one of the best presidents. But also, many young people depend upon their background. These days, especially in the corporate world, I've seen some normally in their 30s and 40s being excellent. And in fact, those who get the opportunity to lead well later had shown the signs earlier. And therefore, for me, I don't restrict to age. Projects I've been most proud of, I must say that of all that I've done in my life to date, 2 of them I'm most proud of. Ghana Christian International High School, and being part of making family life and counseling and people living good family life part and parcel of this nation and the churches. They are the 2. As to the future, I think that I am currently starting something embryonic about a wonderful city which will have almost everything that you want in an environment in the Kwapim Hills with Ako Estate Limited. It's likely to be one. I want to set up a rehab center where people also coming from hospital and are not strong enough to go home can stay there until they are well to come on with supporting young people, some young people to start. We have started 3 years ago, Accra College of Medicine, and then med focus and medical emergencies. So life begins at 70. I think that I want those I'm going to do in my 70s to be even greater than my younger days. Well, I think that if there is, I can't think of 10 great institutions in Ghana beside Ashesi. I think it is entrepreneurial, it is academic, and so far as the future is concerned, probably the greatest institution in preparing people for leadership, not only in Ghana, but Africa. And I think that Patrick deserves all the honors. I hope he will get the star of the Volta, because unlike others, he has had a vision and implemented it, and it is great. Number 2, I think that most Ashesi preparations are preparing people for the business world, but not politically in tune. And I think that we should probably teach politics and then encourage some of those people to go into politics, because political leadership is a key factor. But I hope that if they go to business and they make money, self-actualization, they would like to go into leadership, political leadership. But I wish we can consciously orient them towards political leadership. And I think that in my leadership teaching, I have to now be much more consciously indoctrinating them to know that, yes, it's good to go into business leadership, but if they want to affect society, many of them who are called should consider politics.